School District to order. Let the record show a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called and has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Welcome, everyone. This is a special meeting, and it's unique in that I guess this is the first time we've been personal in about 5 months or so. I forgot how far it goes back. Seems forever when I miss seeing y'all's faces. We have, next item is open forum on the agenda, and we do have a citizen signed up for open forum. And I might just say, we usually have a video that we put up talking about the guidelines of open forum. Basically, we'd like for you to keep it within 3 minutes, whoever's good. Ms. Garner. And it's Megan Garner. What do you want to say?
All right, thank you for having me. Bear with me, y'all. I have not seen this many adults in real life in a long time, so I'd be pretty nervous anyway, but I'm really nervous right now. But I'm here because I'm concerned about the teachers that are classified as high risk under the guidelines about by the CISD. And I feel like social media has done a really good job of pushing those voices down, and I just want to speak on behalf of myself and there's other teachers that feel the same way. And for those of you guys that don't know, I'm a 5th grade teacher in Bertram. Under normal circumstances, I think reaching out to the community and getting their feedback is a fantastic approach, and you guys do a really good job of keeping the community involved in what we do. I just feel like right now it's just not normal, and that just checking with the community is not enough. We were told last week that the virtual squads, if they were available, would the virtual teaching squads would also include times where we would be interacting with large groups of kids, such as the cafeteria, or other times when they're not wearing a mask, or with kids that aren't required to wear a mask. And I kind of felt like I was, and it hurt. The CDC recommends that kids 2 years and up wear a mask. I know right now we're 3rd grade and up, what we're recommending. As a teacher that's going back, I didn't know if we had lower safety guidelines on maybe everybody wearing a mask at some point, and as a parent of a rising 2nd grader, I would feel much more comfortable. They warned about reopening the economy too quick, and Texas went ahead with it anyway, and the numbers have shot up. And the American Academy of Pediatrics recommending opening under certain guidelines, and I feel like with the resources that I know that we have in my classroom and the building that I work in, I don't know how we're going to do that. And I'm afraid to go back into that situation if I'm not able to provide that safe environment for myself, for the kids, for everybody that's there. I feel like the risk of isn't somebody else's problem, even though we're not but it's knocking on our door, showing us as well. And it's not just about right or wrong, it's not about politics, it's just about showing the teachers. There's been a lot of push for kids to go back and save the economy. I'll be the first to say I don't think y'all's job is to save the economy. I think y'all do a great job of protecting us and doing what's best for the district. I don't think that you guys should be tasked with figuring out how to make sure money gets allocated where it needs to go. Okay, thank you. There's money out there for parents. There's money out there for businesses. I don't think it's being allocated in the best ways they could. I think that our legislators could do a better job. My grandma received a stimulus check. She died 2 years ago. My brother gets $4,000 a month in unemployment, and that boy has not worked a real job in 15 years. They could be doing better with what they have. I feel like it's easy for people to dismiss COVID is a threat if you're not high risk, if your family hasn't been affected by it. And again, I just want to represent, or just let you guys know that there are a group of teachers that are very worried about going back. And last but not least, long before I walked up here, I weighed the risk of coming, and it was not easy to come in here today. I appreciate all that you guys have done for the district and that you guys students, I miss my friends, I miss hugs, I miss so much that I took for granted. I also really miss letting my kid hang out with another teacher for 5 days a week. It drives me nuts, y'all. Like, I just want to go back. Like, that's what I want. I don't have all the answers. I just hope that as you guys are finalizing our plans for the upcoming school year, keep the not so local. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Ms. Garner, thank you for speaking. What grade was it you taught? Fifth grade. Okay, no other open forums? Okay. All right, number 3 is report on health, safety, and operational guidelines for returning to school.
Absolutely. So I am going to echo Mr. Field and just let y'all know, I can't tell you how happy I am to actually be in a room with the Board of Trustees tonight, physically gathering. It's just good to have everyone here. We have experienced the fact that sometimes when you're remote, it just makes the meeting a little bit harder. Sometimes it's harder to communicate. So it's just nice to have everyone in the room. On Friday, we sent you a copy of the Smart Restart Plan, and you have a copy of that plan in front of you. That plan is based on guidance provided by the Texas Education Agency, first released on July 7th and then updated as of July 17th. The plan was developed to provide parents and staff members a snapshot of what the 2020-21 school year would look like, while also sharing those actions that we're going to be taking to mitigate COVID-19 spread. The document's especially important for parents because we're going to be asking parents to make a choice about the instructional setting that they want for their child next year, and the document's going to help inform that choice. As a reminder, Burnet CISD is providing parents with 2 choices, in-person instruction and remote instruction, and the decision to offer those 2 choices was informed by our stakeholder survey, requirements of the Texas Education Agency, and in a discussion that I had with our Burnet County Medical Advisor last week, who is also encouraging us to proceed with having both options available to families. We're going to talk about both of those options as part of the overview of this plan. Just as a reminder, as we were developing this plan, we kept 3 commitments at the foundation of our planning, and the first was promoting and maintaining a healthy, safe work and learning environment. That's job 1. Next, we wanted to make sure that whatever we do, we want to provide an access to quality instruction no matter what choice a parent makes. And then we want to continue to provide clear, concise, ongoing communication to build trust among our stakeholders. To date, this plan's been reviewed by the superintendent's cabinet, so all directors in the district, our campus principals. We've had parent representatives from the School Health Advisory Committee review the plan, and campus representatives from the superintendent's campus cabinet have reviewed the plan and provided feedback. And actually, the plan that you have in front of you has some slight modifications, even since it was published Friday, based on some of the feedback we've received from stakeholders. Does anyone else, when they're talking, end up eating their mask? So, as I've shared with some of you, the plan is really a broad outline of our actions. And so each campus and department are going to have to take these broad outlines and then truly operationalize them for their campus. For example, we talk about arrival and dismissal, but every campus is going to have to specifically come up with what does arrival dismissal look like on their campus, and how do we mitigate COVID-19 during the times of arrival and dismissal. Again, a copy of the plan has been provided at each one of your workstations, and we're going to review that plan kind of topic by topic. Page 2, I think, has an important bullet down at the bottom. Per TEA guidelines, this guide is going to be updated with any changes and published publicly 1 week prior to the start of the 2021 school year. So we're required to publish this report in its final form 1 week before the start of the school year. We didn't want to wait till the 1 week before the start of the school year. Everyone needs to have at least what we believe to be our best thought and planning at this point. I will share with you, I have no doubt that there's something off this plan that's going to be changed between now and the start of school. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Dr. Jones and I participate in a conference call with the Commissioner of Education, and I can't tell you how many times it's changed between a Tuesday and a Thursday. And so as things change, we're committed to changing with the guidance. As we receive feedback from our stakeholders, we're committed to making changes. We've listed on page 3 those administrators on each campus that will be the point of contact for questions that parents, community members, staff members have about COVID-related issues. We've listed the symptoms of COVID-19 as published by the Health Task Force associated with the Texas Education Agency. The bottom of page 3, we talk about screening, and really that's going to be the most important point of safety net, making sure that our parents do a proper job of screening their kids before sending them to school, and making sure that our staff does a good job of self-screening before they come to school. Page 4 is a chart on what that screening would look like, the questions that would be associated with that, and then on page 5 is some of the narrative related to screening. So in terms of staff, we are going to be expecting our staff to self-screen each day before they come to work using the checklist found on page 4. That does include a temperature check before coming onto campus. And we don't have this system fully finalized yet, but we believe our student information system is Skyward. As a teacher logs in or a staff member logs into Skyward each day, it's going to pop up a self-screen question. So it will ask them, have they screened, and it will record that information in a database. So if we do have a staff member that is diagnosed with COVID-19, the guidelines currently from the Texas Education Agency are that that person is not allowed to return to work until they are 10 days since the start of symptoms, 3 days fever-free without the use of fever-reducing medication, and then the symptoms have to have improved. During our conversations with staff members, a common question has been, is the district going to provide additional leave for staff? And we do not currently have plans to provide additional leave from the district. As a reminder, every staff member receives 5 days from the state of Texas, leave days, 4 leave days that we locally provide. And then there is, through the Family First Coronavirus Response Act, 10 emergency COVID leave days available if staff members meet the criteria for a COVID-related absence. And so there are 10 additional days built in that most people, that if they are diagnosed, would be eligible for those 10 days. Information on that is posted on our website. In terms of student screening, we talked a lot about how could we have a system in place where we screen students every day or ask parents to verify screening every day. And one of the things we thought about was attendance. When we take attendance and someone is sick, we ask for a note from home. And how often do we not receive that note for that one instance of someone not attending? And the management issue of how do we ask the question every day? We have systems. We could set up a Google form and ask the question, but what do we do if 100% of 3,200 parents don't respond? And are we going to take the time and energy to contact each one of those parents and say, hey, you didn't answer the screening question? And so right now, how the guidance that we're going to be providing to parents is that educating them with what the screening is and letting them know that by sending your child to school, you're affirming that you have screened your child, including a temperature check, and that your child is symptom-free of COVID-19 and that they have not been diagnosed with COVID-19. And if a student is diagnosed with COVID-19, the same gates for re-entry back into the campus are the same. as staff members. 10 days since the start of symptoms, 3 days fever-free, and then symptoms must have improved. At the staff level, once we have Michelle Gilmore, our Director of Human Resources, who is on the phone, and I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, she is available by phone, and Adam Hermas, our Director of Technology, is also available by phone this evening. Michelle Gilmore, our Director of Human Resources, she would be the designated person that would screen any employee before they're coming back. Now, she's not medically screening them, but she's going through a series of questions and checking with them, have they met the criteria to be able to come back. I should say that there is if someone believes that it's a false test, or they think that they should be able to come back sooner, we do have a way that the state has provided where they can get a medical doctor's note saying that they're able to come back, or they can have 2 separate confirmations of a COVID test, at least 24 hours apart, and that would allow them to come to return. On page 6, we talk about close contact. Close contact has been an interesting issue because it's a piece that definition has changed over time. One of the biggest changes in the definition has been the insertion of this statement that close contact is determined by an appropriate public health agency. And so generally the definition is if you are directly exposed to the infectious secretions of a person, so cough or a sneeze, and if you've been within 6 feet of a person confirmed with COVID-19 for a cumulative duration of 15 minutes while not wearing a mask or face shield. But early in the process, this idea of a public health agency being involved in the definition was not part of the overall definition. It's been added since. And so, as we have worked with the medical advisor for Burnet County, there are 2 categories in which we're going to have close contacts. One would be those individuals that have come in close contact with a COVID-19 positive individual at school. And if that occurs, then we're going to be working with the medical health advisor for Burnet County to make the determination on who is going to be defined and fall under the category of close contact, where they would have to be excluded or quarantined for 14 days. In the case where staff member, student, someone believes they've come in close contact outside of school, then we're going to ask for them to stay home initially until they have contacted their primary care physician or until they've contacted the Texas State Department of Health Services Temple Division, Region 7. That is our governing health authority out of Region 7. If there is a confirmed case, we will be notifying staff, parents of that positive case on their campus. One of the things that we're doing right now is going to be working with our attorney to determine how much information can we provide in that notice. Right now, we're being told that there has been a staff or student on X campus that has tested positive. We've been asked the question, are we going to be able to at least tell a grade level or an area in which they have been spent a lot of time in? And so we don't know the answer to that question today. We do know that we cannot provide information to the level that would be identifying of the student or the staff member. And I list the ADA and FERPA regulations related to that. If we do have someone that, again, has been COVID-19 diagnosed, we're going to close off that area until we've had the opportunity to disinfect that area, unless more than 3 days have passed. So we've actually had that sometimes this summer. We've had someone who tested positive. We knew what area they had been at, but then it had been a long weekend or no one else had been in that area. And so it naturally, we went and cleaned it anyways, but it would have passed the test of being able to be occupied. On the bottom of page 7 then is a flow chart to kind of show what does it look like in terms of a student who tests positive, a student who has symptoms before they come to school, a student who's having symptoms at school, and then, again, students having close contact. So just a flow chart that provides a little bit fewer words in telling what's going to happen in each one of those situations. On page 8, we have a section on identifying possible COVID cases. Again, if someone is displaying symptoms, we're going to immediately separate that person. Every campus is going to designate a isolation area, and the person that is going to be manning that isolation area is going to be in PPE, face mask, gloves. We say in the guide a couple of times, we need the cooperation of parents to have their information on file so that we can contact them if something like that should happen, so that they can come pick up their student. And then that area is going to be cleaned before anyone else goes back into that area. In terms of social distancing, our goal is to maintain a distance of 3 to 6 feet when feasible. There are going to be some times in the school district in which we're not going to be able to accomplish that. The bus is one of them. In just a minute, you're going to see, we're going to be recommending to families that they not take the bus if they don't have to, because because of the constraints of 700 square miles and the limited number of buses we have and the limited number of drivers we have, there's just no way if everyone chose to ride the bus that we can truly accommodate appropriate social distancing. In terms of face covering, the definition of a face covering that we're using is the same one that the Texas Education Agency is using, and that includes any non-medical disposable face mask, any type of cloth covering that covers the nose and the mouth, or a full face shield that covers the eyes, nose, and mouth. Schools are required to follow and comply with the governor's executive order, which does say anyone 10 years old or older is required to wear a face covering. We are purchasing a reusable mask for all staff and students. We're going to be asking our families to be responsible for the daily cleaning, and if that mask should become lost, that they provide the replacement. Parents may choose to provide a face shield for their child. And so different districts are having different stances. We're saying that you can wear a mask, you can wear a face shield, you can wear a gaiter, whatever covers the mouth and the nose. Face coverings are going to be required to be worn at school by all staff at all times. A face shield is going to be provided to all staff. Students in grades 3 through 12 will wear face coverings at all times. The governor's rule is 10 years old and older. An age is very difficult to manage because kids are different ages and different grades at different times. And so we settled on the grade 3 through 12 at all times. Students in grades 1st and 2nd, we're going to be asking them to wear a face covering as they arrive, for dismissal, and anytime they're in common areas or hallways. We are going to be providing a face shield for all students in pre-K through 2nd grade, and letting families know that those teachers, there may be activities during the class in which the teacher will ask the students to put the face shield on if they're going to be in a time in which they're going to be close proximity. Students in pre-K through K, we're indicating they may wear it. So there's nothing that prohibits a parent from sending a student and asking them to wear the mask, and we will support that. And then just the same note that face shields are going to be provided for students in pre-K and K for the same reason. No matter what your age is, we are requiring all students who do ride a bus to wear a face covering on the bus because of the limited ability to provide social distancing. We've been asked the question, are we going to allow caps to be worn to school to support a face covering? And absolutely we will. And then any individuals that request any type of accommodation regarding a face covering, we're going to have them start with the campus administrator to work through any type of accommodation that they might need. Here, I just want to share also, give you an idea of some of the PPE that we're in the process of either purchasing or receiving from the state. So kudos to the Texas Education Agency. They did provide a large amount of PPE across the state to school districts. In fact, tomorrow, Mr. Goebel is going to be taking a trailer to the Region Service Center to pick up 20,700 disposable masks, 5,360 reusable masks. We are purchasing as a district gator coverings for all of our staff and our students.
Like when you have on?
Like something similar to what I have on right now. It will be branded. We are purchasing, so we're receiving from TEA 463 face shields that are adult sizes. We are purchasing 1,000 face shields. We are receiving 15,700 gloves, 24 no-touch thermometers. We're receiving 350 gallons of hand sanitizer. As a district, we are purchasing 770 gallons of hand sanitizer. We have purchased 525 hand sanitizer dispensers. We have purchased 400 rubber door wedges. We're going to be opening all classroom doors so that we don't encourage high touch area on classroom doors. We have purchased 12 bottle filler stations. All water fountains have been shut off, and so they're going to be replaced with the bottle filler stations. We have bought 336 cases of disinfectant wipes, currently 300 protective desk dividers, and we're purchasing 1,000 water bottles to be used at the elementary level. And we don't have a number yet, but we're in the process of purchasing social distance floor markers for hallways and for sidewalks outside the building. And we still have more to buy. So this is just as of today, kind of the status of what we have purchased.
Another big one that got added to the list for 10 electrostatic sprayers.
Yes.
For cleaning classrooms and cafeteria and other areas.
So that was to add to our RE assortment, and that number will allow us to ensure that every evening, every classroom is disinfected with a hospital-grade disinfectant.
Is that available? Is that something that's available right now that you can actually?
Yeah, well, actually, we ordered it in March.
We ordered them in March, and we just received them last week.
So when we ordered them in March, we were told we were going to get them like within a couple of weeks. And so.
You're talking about the sprayers.
Yes.
Not the liquid.
The
liquid
sprayers,
It's available all the time, right?
It's been slowly getting tougher to find, but we have been, getting it.
The desk dividers, are those for children, for students, for teachers?
And those are
This number is for one per classroom, so basically to help
guided reading. So at their.
a teacher approaching the student. We have samples are on that table in the back. There is certain conversations about other, if we buy groups to separate the kiddos, but this is, we've already said yes, we're buying, every teacher is going to have one shield to protect guided reading or when they're working in groups.
That's probably the biggest unknown purchase right now that we know. It's unknown what and how much, but we know we're going to need to make it, and we need feedback from our teachers. Once they get into their rooms, we need to know what's going to work and what's not going to work, and where do they need different types of dividers. And so we're committed to purchasing whatever we need to make sure every classroom works the way it needs to in a safe way.
On the masks that we're gonna provide for
Yes.
the one per student, can parents buy more
Absolutely. In fact, I mean,
of
because
that kind?
Will we, so they match or?
So we'll have, are you talking about the branded or just the face
Will we
mask?
giving branded to every student, or what are we giving?
Every student's going to be getting, and we have not seen it yet, so we're using the TEA supply, a face mask.
Okay.
So they're getting a student, little ones will get a student-sized face mask, older students will get an adult-sized face mask. Everyone is gonna be getting a branded gaiter.
Okay,
So they'll start out with 2,
okay.
and then we will have more to replace, like midway through the year, but we are going to encourage families so that they can wash them and make sure. And then we are going to have a large amount of disposable on hand, because if a student gets on the bus, we're gonna be giving them a disposable to wear, so that, make that environment as safe as possible.
And the gators, the branded gators for the adult and students are being bought locally. So I'd imagine there would be an opportunity
To
for
buy
parents who
more.
want to buy it, they could.
I like the ones that the kids got at the strength and conditioning. Those are nice. They dry so fast too.
On page 9, temperature checks. This was interesting. On our survey, you'll recall, temperature checks were very popular, to do daily temperature checks. When the final health advice came out from TEA, that the TEA Medical Task Force actually discouraged daily temperature checks, and for 2 reasons. One, children are typically asymptomatic, and so they say it's a lot of management for not a lot of positive results. And then the variation among the different infrared thermometers. And so they say that you can do it, but they do not necessarily recommend it. As we had talked about different ways that we might do it, and again, I think that the management issue of that many people and the false positives, that we didn't feel like it would be an effective screening technique. Next topic is transportation. Clay, you want to talk about what that will look like?
As Keith discussed earlier, true social distancing is not going to be able to be accomplished on the bus in the way that social distancing is defined now. So we have committed to every student will wear a mask, be required to wear a mask to some face covering as they enter and exit the bus and while they're on the bus. And we're going to try to govern that to the best of our ability. And there will be, if a student refuses, we will be able to ask them to no longer ride the bus. So for your information, student transportation is not required from a school district. Some school districts can say, no, we're not going to provide transportation. That's not a realistic idea in Burnet because of the size and the amount of kids that we feel would be able to come to school, but we are able to put some restrictions to kind of strengthen the requirements we put on the kiddos on the bus. That being said, we are going to highly encourage parents to bring their kiddos to school. That'll be the safest way for their kids to get to and from school, and the more students that are transported that way, the less we have to try to fit into the bus, and it'll help us transport the students safer. The parents, children will be screened by parents as they enter, just like when they're bringing them to school. We're gonna have a sign on the bus that reminds kiddos, that reminds them of the symptoms. They're gonna have a hand wash station, hand sanitizer mounted on every bus for the kiddos to get hand sanitizer on their hands as they enter the bus. We are gonna fill the bus from back to front, so we don't have traffic crossing where other kiddos are in the seats. We still, however, are gonna try to do our best to separate secondary and elementary students to the best of our ability. So we're gonna do everything we can to keep a senior from sharing a seat with a second grader. And we have some ideas on how to accomplish that. We are gonna ask to allow the social distancing as they enter the buses, so 6 foot behind the other folks who've entered the buses. We're gonna do our best in exiting the buses to provide that same, we'll do the 6 foot thing. We are gonna have difficulty because we have kids exiting at different campuses, so we won't fully be able to not have any kids in the seats as people cross the hallway. So we are building those bus routes trying to build strategically to limit those different areas. Students will have the assigned seats, so we know who is sitting with who and who they're in contact with. We also will be able to use our bus cameras to benefit in that. If we need to look at, if a child was around somebody, we can go back and look at the cameras and identify that. The buses will be disinfected after every trip, and make sure they're clean and ready to go. And that's the big piece, is that our main attempt to distance is we're limiting our seats to 2 students per seat. We do typically have a good number of seats that have 3 kids in a seat, so we are limiting that number. And that is a challenge to get all the students transported without those seats available. So Mr. Albro and I and his team are working. Basically, we transport about 1,400 kids per day prior to this. He's trying to build a model that can transport 1,100, and we're hoping that can fit and allow 2 kids per seat and be as safe as possible. When possible, we're gonna have the windows open to keep airflow and all the different ideas that promote safety on the bus. Questions or comments?
In terms of arrival and dismissal, we're going to try and use multiple entryways and dismissal points from the campus, training students not to bottleneck at a doorway. We're going to be asking students to go straight to their classroom. You'll be hearing a little bit about that when we talk about breakfast in just a moment. Hand sanitizer dispensers are being installed at all entry points and in every classroom throughout the district. We already had a pretty good covering of the district, but every classroom, every entry point will have hand sanitizer. Students are going to be expected to use that every time they enter into the building and enter into a classroom. And then we're going to try and do staggered release in the afternoon so that we don't have grade level on top of grade levels trying to exit the building. Talk about meal service, Clay?
Yes, sir. So as far as breakfast is concerned, we're gonna practice a grab and go / breakfast in the classroom model. So grades pre-K through 2 will have all their meals provided into the classroom for the students as they arrive. The department will be providing a meal for every single student that's enrolled. So in the morning when the kiddos get there, there's gonna be a meal placed on every desk. And then as far as kids that are absent, we'll come back and pick up those leftovers and recycle those back. But so those meals will be in the room waiting for the kiddos as they arrive so they can come in and begin eating breakfast. For grades 3 through 12, we're going to institute a grab and go breakfast. That will allow students to grab the breakfast and then go somewhere safe and give the campus flexibility. If that is, they go into their classroom, they go to the gym, whatever the different campuses can work out to keep them separated and safe. One of the reasons for the grab and go and alternate breakfast is to save time, so we have more time to get those kiddos into school from the buses and get them straight into the classroom and learning, and so that is what's driving the breakfast decisions. Those breakfasts will be pre-prepared and then packaged, so that every kid's going to have that same package on their desk when they arrive. As far as lunch is concerned, we are going to provide lunch in the cafeteria. The meals will be prepared and pre-prepared, but then packaged for all students. So they're going to get, their meals are going to be packed and ready to roll as they show up. Students grades pre-K through 5, the meals will be placed at a seat for them. So as the students come into the cafeteria, they will be able to go straight to their seat. One of the big things we're trying to avoid are lines, where kids are stacking up in lines or are dragging their hands on a serving line when the next kids follow. So pre-K through 5, we will be able to place those meals at the table. And the secondary level, 6 through 12, we are going to have them pre-packaged, but we are going to create a system where those kids grab their lunch and keep a good steady move, grab them and go take a seat. Those seats will be clearly marked what is available for the kids to sit at to provide some distancing. The goal along the seats is to have a child, we're going to skip a seat between every kid, so we will not have a kid no student will be sitting directly by a student or directly across the student. They will have that seat, in between them. Secondary level, that will allow us to have some, choices as far as entrees are concerned. At the elementary, it's gonna be one choice, and the plates will be full and given to the students. We also will be providing, lunches, a breakfast lunch combo, similar to what we did during the summer and during the closure for students who do choose to educate remotely. It'll probably be a once-a-week pickup, and they're gonna get a prepackaged, set of meals of breakfasts and lunches. And I think the plan of that is some warm meals with directions on how to warm them, microwave them, and that sort of stuff. So we are gonna continue to work to keep the kids as separated as possible as they go into the lunchroom. A lot of it, transportation and food service, depends on how many kiddos come to school and choose to come to school, and that'll determine a lot of the plan.
Charlie, you want to talk about enhanced cleaning protocol?
Sure, as Keith mentioned earlier, the purchase of the electrostatic sprayers, along with the ones we already had in stock, are gonna allow us to be able to disinfect every classroom and every common area in the evening after school is closed. But we're also going to have two daytime custodians that will rotate through the schools and disinfect during the day for the common areas, restrooms, that type of thing, so that we're constantly in a cleaning mode or disinfecting mode. Middle school is a little different. We'll have three because we do have an uphill and downhill. So, we'll have to share some responsibility there. We have put in, or putting in hand sanitizers at every entry in every, library, the lunchrooms, the, classrooms, and, so that, students can quickly, disinfect their hands as they go into a classroom or leave to the next. They're also going to have sanitary wipes in their classroom that they can use for wiping down their desks if they would like to, as well as for the teachers, as well as tissues, Kleenex tissues in classrooms. Every classroom will have whatever they need in the way of Kleenexes for the students and staff. The fire marshal has agreed to allow us to open the doors, and we bought wedges so that we can limit the amount of touching that's going on with door handles and or the doors themselves. And so that will be a help. And we've added our sink. We have different types of sinks. So our sinks have, some of them are plunge, where you push down and it runs the water. We've extended the run time on them to the max time, which is 15 seconds, to help with their washing of hands. We've replaced or are going to be putting in bottle fillers. We've got the first delivery of those today. We'll start installing those tomorrow. They'll be at strategic locations. And again, as Steve mentioned, we've turned off the water fountain so that we don't have a contamination of somebody trying to go up and drink after another student. We have also made a high hit list for every one of our custodians, our expectation of what they will absolutely touch every single evening. And that has been handed out to them and gone over with their leads. We have also going to put in trash cans in every classroom, a 4 to 5 gallon trash can on a roller, so that these meals that are going to be in the morning, they can drop those into those trash cans. The teacher will push it out in the hall, and the custodian will come through and empty those, and then we'll push it back into the classroom so that they can use it for any other needs that they have. Another thing we have done is we are looking at the possibility our HVAC systems allow us to bring in, we're required to bring in outside air, which will help clean the air that is running through the HVAC system. And we're going to put the fans on continuous, and that's going to allow some outside air and air movement in the classroom to lessen the effect of any type of problems. Any questions?
I have a question about our custodians. Are we looking out What, they can be required to wear something special, some extra PPE?
They are required to wear the same, PPE that everyone else is, have been through the summer. And it worked well for us, because in fact, we had one that, became ill, and because of the way we set everything up, no one was, around that person, and everybody was using their personal protection equipment.
And custodians often are wearing gloves in addition to the mask.
They are required to wear gloves, they're required, and will be required to wear masks now.
And when they spray that disinfectant, is it dangerous for them? Because
It is not.
no.
So in terms of in-person classroom, this is an area where, talk about, there are some broad guidelines, but really, it's gonna be every campus and every teacher working to develop the system within. A broad stroke action though, our secondary campuses are going to be adopting a block schedule so that those students will be taking 4 90-minute classes on one day, and then 4 90-minute classes the next day. That will reduce, rather than an 8-period day where they're constantly changing, it will reduce the number of transitions and the number of students that they're interacting with on any given day. It will also slow the day down quite a bit for our teachers, who, especially at secondary, are going to have to oftentimes teach face-to-face, but then also be responsible for the remote, because some of them teach onesie sections. And so we think that it will be easier for them to manage that kind of load given that schedule. We're going to the greatest extent possible try to keep elementary groups pure and the same throughout the day, reduce transitions to the greatest extent possible. As Charlie mentioned, classroom doors are going to remain open. Traffic patterns are going to be established at all campuses so that we don't have crowds just gathering in random ways, but people are going to move much like a well-trained elementary campuses always do, you know, to the right, to the left.
RJ Ritchie.
That's right. Social distancing in classrooms will be accomplished to the extent possible. Students are going to have assigned seats throughout the district. Shared supplies and materials will be disinfected between uses. Hand sanitizer and wipes are going to be available in classrooms. And one of the things that wasn't on our list, we have bought a ton of facial tissue, too. So we're going to have facial tissues available in all classrooms. We are going to be asking students to, and staff to ensure that students sanitize or wash their hands a minimum of 3 times a day. On the first day of school, everyone is going to be learning about all of the safety protocols. And so we're going to have age-appropriate instruction on all of the mitigation actions, all of the skills of washing your hands, sneezing in your elbow, using a tissue, all of those things. We're going to be asking parents to reinforce that message at home, and we've already mentioned the water fountains being shut down. Recess is going to be permitted at elementary campuses. We're going to limit the number of students on a playground equipment at any one time, and we're going to limit homeroom classes mixing while they're on playground equipment or at recess.
I have a question about that.
Mm-hmm.
So when you said, homeroom classes will not mix during recess, so if you have, I'm in my mind, I'm trying to figure out how that many kids can have separate recesses throughout the day.
Well, they were talking about even when they're out there at the same time having different zones, and just working it out with the students. And so again, that's going to be one of those things that campuses are going to have to, but during the call with principals, they talked about creating specific zones that they switch then. That some kids would be at the playground zone, some would be at the open field zone. In terms of, on page 12, visitors, deliveries, gatherings, this school year, we are going to limit visitors to campuses. And so really, non-essential visits aren't going to take place. And so we're not going to have mentors or volunteers coming on campus this school year. We're going to be asking parents not to visit for lunch. If there is a essential meeting, an ARD meeting, a parent-teacher conference, we'll either hold that virtually or by appointment. All visitors are going to have to go through the self-screen including a temperature check, and wear a face covering before entering the campuses. We're going to ask that we don't have outside deliveries of food. And so, yes. The famous table at Burnet High School that gets filled up with 50 meals, we're just not going to manage that this year. Right now, field trips, large gatherings, pep rallies, assemblies, open houses are going to be prohibited until further notice. And as a reminder, we talked about parents who might want to get around the don't bring the McDonald's. If a student forgets their lunch, remember, we allow everyone to charge for lunch, and no one has ever denied a hot meal in Burnet CISD. That middle section is just a reminder to parents about the attendance requirement. Whether you're a remote learner or in-person learner, you've got to be present 90% of the time to get credit or for promotion standards. We also mentioned the 7 days that are in our school calendar that are designated for makeup days. And so some of those on the calendar are listed as professional development, but they're also listed as possible makeup days. And then the district would consider closing campuses where there are high concentrations of reported COVID-19 symptoms. We are in the process of developing internal guidance on what is the threshold of when a campus would be considered for closing. Yes.
Would that include that, let's say you had a outbreak in just the 5th grade, that 5th grade would be potentially, okay, 5th grade, you're gonna be gone for a few days and everybody else keep going, or is it all or none on the campus?
I think we're going to have discussion. It may be an all or none. Now, I will tell you, the TEA is not expecting districts to shut down for long periods of time. In fact, they are indicating that a district should not shut down for any longer than 5 days. They consider shutdown only required to clean the building and kind of reset. And so,
and they're not giving guidance on a percentage?
They are not at this time. The one thing that they have promised that we're supposed to get is a detailed flow chart, checklist of when there's a COVID-19 exposure or positive test, what are the exact steps that they expect all school districts to take. We have not gotten that yet, but they say it's coming.
And then have they talked about, if Shady Grove had to shut down for a week, have they talked about what that does to our attendance?
So, and it's interesting, when we shut down with the remote possibility, we're no longer truly shut down. So if it's a situation where we have an area where there's a number of students identified and it was in this area and we need to go in and deep clean, we could shut down for a day or two, deep clean, have everyone come back. Or if we felt like we needed to keep them out longer, they could go into remote learning. And so we can get attendance for remote learning. Even this year, if students are just sick and going to be out with chickenpox for a week, we could get attendance by moving them over to remote. The other thing that TEA has announced is that there's going to be a whole harmless provision in terms of attendance for the first 12 weeks of school. So if things don't go well in the first 12 weeks, and in fact, they just changed their calculation on this, they are going to go to the last 3 years of average daily attendance, figure out what that is, and they're supposed to tell us here within the next couple of weeks what that figure is. If we dip below that, we're guaranteed that average. If we go above it, we're guaranteed the higher average. So, I mean, this is a year, if we do well, we think we can actually increase funding by using the remote learning effectively. So we do still have some work to do in terms of what is that internal guidance in terms of shutting down a campus. And then I do know that I think the medical health advisor for Burnet County is, as we're reporting cases, she indicated that that would be part of the conversation too. The last point that I'd make before I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Jones to talk about instructional settings, another question from staff that that we've been asked, that I forgot to mention earlier, we've been asked about the leave time. And so everyone is getting 10 additional days. We've also been asked, because of the possibility of someone having to quarantine upwards of 14 days, and maybe they feel okay, but they just came in contact with, and the health advisor saying that they have to be home for 14 days. We've been asked the question, will teachers be able to teach home to their classroom? And so I will tell you, we don't have an answer for that right now. There's lots of complications to be able to accomplish that. You've got to have the technology at the teacher's home. You've got to have the technology in the classroom. You still have a number of students who have to have an adult in the room to manage the class. And so we're still having conversations. It is definitely on our list, and we're going to be communicating to staff that we're talking about that, and we will provide some type of answer before school starts. I don't know what the answer is right now. I just know there are a lot of challenges to it, but we want to think outside the box, and because from an instructional standpoint, it does provide continuity of instruction. And there is a great chance this year that substitute teachers are not going to be available at the same level that we've had them available. And so I think we're all going to have to think outside the box and be creative. But the other piece that we've talked about is there's a real equity issue. We can't do it for one person and not do it for another. And so we've got to figure out, is there a way to do it and ensure that everyone can do it if they're at home and feel okay and want to do that.
If you're quarantined, it's tough to sit there and say, well, you only have X amount of days, you're gonna use them. They're up there teaching, now they're quarantined, it's on us to give them those days, it's not the kind of game. I've been in my work, we're quarantined, we get paid. We do what we can from the house, but you can't count that against the teacher or any other staff that were sent home, because they were in quarantine or formed close contact or whatever. So, something to think about and not count against them or make them use their days.
Right. I mean, given our current, there's some legal issues too that we're also investigating. To say that someone doesn't show up and that they're excluded because it's a COVID diagnosis versus is someone who misses school for another reason. And so, there's just lots of issues to address.
I'm thinking like, okay, the fifth grade, West Wing just got sent home for quarantine. Well, everybody gets to go, teacher included, because they were obviously exposed. Now, exposure definitions.
Right. So and I have had that question. I think that early on, the definition made it seem like, gosh, anyone in the classroom, the whole classroom was going to have to be quarantined. My understanding is, based on this definition, it's going to be a conversation with the health advisor, and it is not an automatic that everyone's going home. And that was part of the reason too for the federal leave of, it's really 80 hours over, it's 80 hours is what it's officially defined as. But that, if you include weekends, that covers kind of the 14-day quarantine.
Yeah, but then if they get sick, then it could be another 14 days or however long it takes them to get over it, right? So
right, on the sick, it could be 10 days.
Yeah, but if they're quarantined, because I'm in contact, there's 14 days, or because it's about 10 to 14 days when you could see symptoms.
Yep.
Then you got another time to get well after that, which could be another 14 days, or whatever that person, however long it takes them to get over it.
Right.
So you're looking at a significant amount of time for that individual that they can be out if they're quarantined and then they actually get
absolutely
sick.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, that is an issue. There's not just one easy answer to that.
I agree.
And then I didn't even mention the financial implications. So we definitely have more work to do on that, and we're committed to continuing to investigate that. So I mentioned that parents are going to have to make an instructional setting choice. So Dr. Jones, would you talk through those two options.
Sure will. Before I get into the details of it, I want to give you just a little bit of a reminder of the process. So at the end of June, TEA let us know that we had two options of the types of programs that we could do, synchronous, which is last time, or asynchronous, which is not last time. And so because of the needs of our community, because of some of the remote settings, we knew that some of our kids would have trouble having to stream live for attendance credit, and so we chose asynchronous. Shortly after that decision, we surveyed our instructional staff on campus. So far, we've gotten back like 238, I think, was the last time I looked at responses, to kind of see what their proficiencies were, what concerns they had, like how comfortable do you feel about, teaching online? How comfortable do you feel about this aspect of it, that aspect of it, so that we could find who was ready to teach a friend and who was extremely uncomfortable and needed to really have a lot of support. And also who was excited, like if we had a full-time virtual teacher, like would you want to be chomping at the bit to be the first one invited to a class? And who's really hesitant and says, I'll do that if I have to, but I don't like it. So we did survey our staff to kind of get some ground laid, because we knew that TEA would give us a lot more details, and we'd want to be able to act on those details when we got them. So then the rubrics from TEA came out on July the 9th to tell us what the program has to look like for them to approve it. We do have to create, we don't know what the template looks like yet, but we have to submit our instructional program to the state for approval. And they have to approve that in order for it to be fundable. Now, they're going to give us lots of provisional time at the beginning to get it right. So we're paying close attention to the rubrics. I'd really like to not go back and forth a bunch of times with the state. So then, after we got that on the 9th, which was a Thursday, the very next Monday, we invited teachers to be part of focus groups. And we're running 4 focus groups. The second meeting was today for 3 of those groups. We had over 50 volunteers. So within 48 hours, our focus groups had more participation than I thought we would have if I had sent out a second call. So I was so grateful to our teachers for their time, and they've given us a lot of really good questions. They've given us, I'm trying to talk really loud for a minute. They've helped us ask better questions. On the 16th, which was last Thursday, TA also announced that they were going to be providing an LMS, like Canvas, Blackboard, Schoology, those kinds of programs for 2 years. We don't know what that will be, but that's just an example of how the instructional plan is probably going to change again. So I want to thank our coordinators, our curriculum coordinators, and special ed coordinators, because they ran a lot of the focus groups, and they just ran with it. They did awesome on short notice. So if we can look at the plan, we'll walk through the instructional settings section. For Thomas Distance Dogs 2.0, we added the 2.0 because we want to be really clear that this is very different than the emergency distance learning in the spring. Very different. This is going to have a similar amount of time and effort from the student as face-to-face instruction. So our families will get to make a choice, but if they don't choose, if they don't respond, they will default to the in-person option. That choice will roll out to parents here in the next day or two, and we're going to ask them to let us know within a week, although that won't lock in until August 6th. So for the in-person option, it is school. It is face-to-face, full schedule school, what we're accustomed to. We've talked about, and she's already alluded to the middle school and high school having blocks to reduce the number of transition times. You might have heard in the news that there's an option for high schools to go to a hybrid schedule, so that for all students, no matter what they elected to do, we can require them to be home every other day and learn remotely. We just learned about that Friday. And so we're still trying to talk about what would that look like, would it benefit us, we really don't know. So that's a new option that's on the table, but it is only for high school. So right now, we haven't made plans to do that yet. Then on to page 13, you'll see the last bullet says when the district closes its campus, is results to maximum of 5 days. And so even for the on-campus kids, we don't anticipate that they would have to go into remote learning for a really long time, but just in time to clean. You get down to the remote at home option. So our BCISD teachers are going to be providing this. We're not going to be asking parents to be the teacher. This is not homeschool. This is BCISD schools with a home setting, but it is our BCISD teachers who will be designing lessons, who will be progress monitoring the kids. There will be times that they ask the students to log in for synchronous time. So even though it's an asynchronous model, we will have times that kids need to be live for a class meeting, for tutorials, for things like that. Parents are going to have to agree to a list, and they're in the back of the sky, but it's a pretty extensive list of agreements because we want to be very upfront with families that this is a major decision. You're committing to a lot. You know, you're committing to your kid working for hours at home. 3 to 4 hours for little bitties, 4 to 6 hours for older kids. It's going to be full-time school at home. It's not going to be kind of a scattered, independent study from time to time. So students who select can participate in extracurriculars. And this was a kind of a journey of thinking. Whenever that option first rolled out to us, our initial thought was, no, that doesn't make sense. If a student is nervous about being in school, why would they come and do extracurriculars? That just doesn't make sense. Well, in my mind, we were thinking 8-period day, everybody's switching, kids coming on and off campus, that would be utter chaos. It doesn't help the kids one bit. Then, TA also came and said that we have to choose all or none. And so we can choose that all extracurriculars and co-curriculars can meet, or that remote kids can participate, or remote kids can participate in no extracurricular or co-curricular. We're not allowed to go through and say, UIL academics is safe, golf is safe, but football, volleyball, no, we can't do that. We have to say all or none. And so we were leaning towards no. Well, then in talking with our campus principals and in talking about what does the block schedule day look like, we actually kind of reversed our thinking there, because if a student chooses to stay home for all the periods of the day except for their extracurricular, you actually have fewer kids on campus, so it makes everybody else safer if we allow that. We're not going to provide transportation, but if that family chooses for the kid to come up, if they've decided that that risk level is tolerable to them, that's the family's choice. But it does mean we have fewer students there for the rest of the day, which then that kind of changed our thinking that, okay, if a kid wants to come to school to participate in that class period that is associated with their extracurricular or co-curricular, then we would allow them to do that just for that class period. That's something that we can have more conversation about, but that's our leaning after talking with principals and leadership teams so far.
So why don't we stop right there and have that discussion and make sure, I mean, that is something that would be our recommendation, but if the board wants to do something different, the can't participate requires a resolution. So kind of the default is can participate. The don't participate requires a resolution of the board, and we could bring that back next Monday or the 27th if the board felt strongly that those students not participate. To echo the point, I mean, just think about, as we went down the list, there's a lot of things where a parent might say, I don't want my kid to be at school every day, but I want them to be able to participate in tennis or golf. Some people have used swim, UIL academics, showing an animal. And there's just lots of opportunities that it can be done in a safe way. Now, if someone came to me and said, I'm going to keep my child home for safety reasons, but I want them to play football, that's hard for me to comport. I mean, that doesn't make sense for both cases. Unfortunately, TEA doesn't allow us to make that choice. And so we're either going to say yes to the universe of all extracurricular and co-curricular, or we're going to have to say no to everything. And we leaned on the side of saying yes to kids because a lot of these extracurricular, co-curricular are very important to kids. And as we've surveyed surrounding districts, most everyone and our athletic district is moving in that same direction to allow the same.
I mean, it's almost, I mean, almost to the point of you're giving them a choice to, hey, I don't want to come to school, but I want to do this. Well, maybe I want to go to math class, but I don't want to participate. Maybe I can show up one day. It doesn't make sense. I get where sports, UIL, extracurricular drive you to want to do better in school. If I'm not participating, maybe, you know, in extra school, I don't care. So that keeps a lot of them, you know, that's the drive that keeps them great. That's the part that I agree with. It's just the picking and choosing, I guess, milking the system is what I'm concerned about. Hey, I don't want to send my kid. Is there any way for, I want to make sure that person is at home. Is it at 8 o'clock? Is he up? Can we check in? You log in to your classes and you're doing just like everybody else that's at school. Are you doing your work? Are you just sleeping till noon, right? Getting a few hours in and then going to football?
Now, in terms of UIL eligibility, remote learning, now, because we're going to be choosing a asynchronous model, so it's not, they have to be on at the same time as the teacher at 8 o'clock. So, but there is going to be a body of work that has to be done for generally 4 hours.
About 4 hours usually.
And so it's not like the emergency online teaching that took place in the spring. So there are going to be definite requirements, and if the student doesn't show up and engage, or they don't have the grades in the remote learning, then they're not going to be eligible to participate.
So is it like, I guess, like a good day? Is it
So let's,
a class, say, first period, is it, how do they take their first period through the remote learning?
So it could be the teacher pre-records themselves teaching a concept and posts that video in the platform for the student to access. You can watch a video, do the activity, submit it to the teacher can give feedback, whether it's that day or the next day. It might be that the teacher says, you didn't do so well on that, I'm gonna need you to log in and have a Google Meet with me, and here are the times available. So what the state has said is that we can count attendance as engagement in the course. And we get to define, and then they have to approve, what we define as engagement in the course for attendance purposes. And so that's part of what the instructional focus group has worked on, is what kinds of things would we say a kid was engaged in the course? Like, what would we bless as a district as saying that's course engagement? So that's for attendance purposes, but then the other piece is that grading has to be done the same for remote and for in-person. So we will not be doing these alternate marks that we were able to do for emergency learning in the spring. They get full-on number grades, the same kind of grades, their GPA, it counts for GPA, the same. So they're going to be taking same test, same assignments in many cases. So if they don't get their work done, they're not going to be successful in the class, and they won't be eligible for the UIL event.
I guess my concern is, if you're watching a tape version, are you watching that tape version, your parent, your brother taking that test for you, or are you now logged in to webinar where that first period, whether you're in class or remotely, you're getting the same instruction?
Yeah.
You're almost like you're in virtual. You're in class with your same classmates, you're just at home.
Right, and that would be the synchronous model. Because some of your families don't have reliable technology, or they've got 5 kids at home sharing their internet connection, we couldn't guarantee that everyone could log into their class. So we needed to have some flexibility for maybe Johnny can be synchronous with his teacher on Monday, but Susie can do it Tuesday if it has to overlap. And so it gives us more flexibility. It doesn't mean we'll never have times that they've got to be live time. The other, and so your concern about, is the parent going to take the test for the kid? That's a real valid one. And that's one of the big tasks of the assessment focus group. So we tasked the focus group for assessment of what kind of proctoring, what do colleges do? How would we know, would we do online testing? Would we, you know, how could we do this in a way to know that it was the kids' work? So we'll have some parameters that it's not a free-for-all, because we want it to be real and authentic.
Can they Google the answer?
I couldn't hear you.
Or can they Google the answer?
Right, right. If you can Google the answer, it's probably not a great question.
Not a higher level question.
It isn't, if you can outright Google it, that's not very deep learning. Other extracurricular thoughts?
Did you have something? Or?
Well, no, I mean, there was a parent that reached out to me that, I mean, and it's puzzling to me that her son has a compromised immune system, but he wants to do extracurricular. She has going to choose remote learning. I don't understand. I just don't understand if his system is already compromised, why you would want to jeopardize it even more. But I do understand that it's all or none, you know, on our end.
We heard some rationale, one parent, and some of it depends on what the extracurricular is. They said it's just the sheer number of load of people they come in contact with in a day is still lower.
Right.
Even if I bring them up for the extracurricular, it's still lower than if they went to cafeteria, if they did this or the other. So there is some of that rationale that I've heard from some parents too.
I think emotionally for these kids, I mean, that may be the only friends they get to see that day, and I think I watched my kid walk down the street with his friends after a few months of this, and I started crying. I mean, you know, he missed them so much. I think that's important. Sorry.
So how do you ensure that kid that's remote learning, I mean, is there some kind of test he's gonna have to take as far as answer these questions?
Well, I mean, the same.
Because the other kids have been at school, assuming that they've answered those questions.
So, I mean, we would have the same expectation that if you're a remote learner and you're coming up from the period during the day of the extracurricular, that you, by sending your child, you're affirming that you're doing that. Yes.
And as with any teacher, our extracurricular sponsors know the kids really well. A lot of times, them for multiple years. If a kid is acting off, they're gonna send them to the nurse. I mean, none of this means that judgment call of the professional who sees the kid face to face goes away. So if they come up and they're not themselves, I'm gonna be sure that there's not more going on.
I had a parent reach out to me and say that I'm not sending my child to school because you have a requirement to wear a mask. And it was a high school student who I happen to know is an extracurricular. And so I wrote back and just said, by the way, I just want to remind you that they're going to have to wear a mask when they're not actively engaged in an exercise. And she said, that's fine. I just don't want him wearing a mask all day. But if he's got to wear a mask for a limited period of times while participating, he'll comply with that. So.
I think y'all got my original answer to your first email was, yeah, hallelujah. And you came back with rationale of the second one where there was no option. And to me, there is, because I was in the middle of telling somebody what we were doing and then had to read the email and say, no, by the way, we're not doing that. But that's the way this whole thing's gone.
Yep.
It's always like that. Yeah, oh, by the way, we're doing this.
Yep.
No, we're not.
Yep.
So, more power to you.
I mean, like you said,
I think, you know, I trust y'all to make the right judgment on that. It looks like that's the common way to do it, most common sense way to do it.
every district I've talked to has gone down the same windy path.
Yeah.
They all said no because it's not, well, and again, I'm not gonna be afraid to tell a parent, it's hard for me to believe your rationale if you're choosing for your son or daughter to participate in some of our activities. It doesn't hold a lot of weight. But when you look at all of the universe of possibilities that you're gonna be saying no to, and some people do have some legitimate reasons why they may be choosing remote learning. I have always found anytime I had to take an online class, it was a lot harder to do because you have to prove the engagement. So that means I'm writing more in my online class than I ever did in my face-to-face class, so.
Do you have any kind of a feel, the percentage kids are gonna choose?
I don't, I mean, if you look at the survey data, and, you know, a couple of districts around us have done surveys since we did ours, you know, it could be 20, 30%, but, I mean, there's also this side of me that goes, I mean, I don't know, it depends. I mean, I get so many emails, and they are on opposite ends of the continuum, and so it's hard to quantify, and what's it gonna look like even, you know, 2 more weeks. So, I don't know. That's why, but I do know for planning purposes, I mean, that's why we've got to get this information out now and get parents to commit, or at least tell us their initial, by the 27th, what do you think you're going to do? Because then we're going to know physical number of students in the building, and we can begin making plans a little bit more solidly than what we're able to make right now. And if we come back and 95% of all students want to be in the building, then we maybe come back and have a discussion about, you know, how can we do something slightly different to try and encourage the social distancing? Because if the buildings are full, that's going to be a challenge to manage.
Ready to keep going with the instructions? All right, let's see, 4. The 4th bullet down in the at-home, this is an important point that we'll need for parents to understand that unlike in the spring, students can't work ahead. It's daily attendance, and so they can't work ahead on Monday, Tuesday, and then not do anything until Wednesday through Friday and be kind of present. We are required to look at their engagement daily. We've talked through lots of these pieces. For hard copies, like if a student needs a hard copy textbook, or if they have to turn in a hard copy of work, like if it's art, and they've got to actually turn in something, and we're not going to be utilizing the postal mail as our primary means to do that. That was really difficult in the spring. We were still getting return mail week before last from March. It took so long to make the round trip, and so that's just, when you've got to report engagement daily, that's not timely enough to have an authentic learning experience. On page 14, that very first bullet specifies that if a parent chooses remote, and later they decide that they'd really like to come back to campus, we'll do that, but that's going to be at the 6-week grading period, because we've already made arrangements for in-person class rosters, we've already given them a remote teacher, and so they'll need to tell us by September 11th that they're wanting for the second 6 weeks to begin back in person. So there's a little bit of a gate to stop the back and forth that we anticipate could happen. Now, there's no gate to go the other way. A student could go into remote at any time. And part of that could be because they've got to isolate, part of it could be because they're sick, part of it could be because they get to campus and they feel like, oh my gosh, this is not okay with me. So they can go into remote learning at any time, but once they've declared, I want to be full-time, this is the setting that I want as my primary setting, not just to sit, but then they're going to have to wait till the grading period changes to make a change back to in-person.
So what is September 11th? How much time is that notice before?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks
Okay.
before the end.
So if dates change, then we know it's 2 weeks.
Yes, always 2 weeks.
2 weeks before any grading period. Clay has spoken to meal service, and then finally, some elective courses are not going to work for remote. I mean, welding, ag, you've got an animal, you've got to come up and take care of it. So one of the handouts that you have is a draft that the curriculum focus group, so that the teachers in that group work together to look at standards, to look at equipment, and to come up with a list of what they're thinking have some kind of in-person requirements to get credit. Looks like this.
Distance dogs up the top?
I might not have made it up there. Because we were working on this at can see there's some high school courses that say frequent, and then there's some that say occasional. We'll define that more as we have some further conversations, but that way families can look to see that, you know, if I want to stay in choir, that means I'm gonna have to be at school. You know, those UIL events will, when we further flesh that out to the final draft, it'll probably say daily for some of those, that we have to be there daily for athletics and things like that. So this will be available to parents before they have to make their choice. Right? Special programs, we will still be serving our special programs who choose a remote setting. So we'll still have, our committee, 504 committee meetings, talk about the student accommodations. Our special ed team is exploring some software options, to try to help, kids have dyslexia, some, platforms for speech therapists to interact as their groups kind of get wonky depending on who chooses to be home and who chooses to be in person. And our SPED leadership has been part of our focus groups with our teachers as well. So we're really, it's an integrated approach for teaching and learning. They're part of our core team. We will still be serving those students. And then finally, grading, as I alluded to before, same thing. Numeric grades, both for at home and at school. Everything counts in GPA. The averages are going to be done the same. That is one of the requirements for remote learning from the state. And so we are going to hold to that. That topic is also a discussion in both our assessment and our instructional focus groups. And so a lot of the points in here, we've really tasked teachers, tell us what we're not thinking of, tell us what questions we haven't thought to ask, and, you know, what are your concerns and your places that cause you to lock up and be anxious about, so that we can understand, you know, they're closer to the work. The last page is the list of parent agreements that a parent will attest to. I agree to everything on this list before I choose remote instruction. So that means they're going to support their students to learn, not do it for them. They understand the electives could change. They understand they have to provide transportation to extracurriculars if they're coming up during the day. And that they understand the time frames of not being able to go back and forth day in, day out. Any questions on where the instructional plans are as of today?
And then the question we've been asking as we've been getting stakeholder input, you know, what have we not thought about? Or what concerns do you have about what you heard, or what questions do you have?
My biggest question or concern, which I'm sure it's y'all, but when that student comes into school, just the unknown, and so they're spreading it, and the quarantine is 3 to 5 days, and then those other students are spreading it, and then it to the teacher, and then the teachers to teachers, and what's that's so unknown. I mean, I don't know how you're gonna prepare for that, but I see, you know, I think that's what I've been trying to figure out, is how's the best way to avoid that, and I don't think there's any way. I think it's just gonna happen. It's gonna happen when it's gonna happen, and hopefully the quarantine is enough to get us through to the next time. So I don't know if this is an ever-moving target. It's so fluid, and I think what y'all done to date is amazing in trying to think through all the possibilities and not getting any help from the other agencies. So that kudos to y'all. But I think that's my biggest concern, is how do we get through this year? And I think that's y'all too. There's no doubt about that.
And, you know, I will reiterate, I have no doubt that this plan is going to change again. I can almost guarantee you that something's going to come down from the Texas Education Agency. And I think our principals are anxiously waiting for teachers to get back. I mean, we're having contact with teachers, but we're also trying to be respectful of them, being off contract. But having them back in the building and really begin talking about what does it specifically look like on our campus to do these different components that we've talked about, in the safest way possible. So this plan, along with, you know, I send out an email after all board meetings, board meeting recap. And so this plan is gonna go out in that meeting recap, along with just a discussion of everything that we're gonna discuss tonight. Then tomorrow, the plan is that we will be sending out a communication to all parents, sharing this plan and how they can make that instructional setting choice. And we're gonna be using our Skyward student information system to make that choice. So parents will be able to go on there. We're going to ask them, they're gonna get it tomorrow, the 21st. We're gonna ask them to make the choice by the 27th, knowing that they have an opportunity to make a change up until August 6th, right? That date changed, and we'll tell you why that changed a little bit. So they're not locked in until after August 6th, and then they have to be locked in for that first grading period so that we can continue to move forward. But we need to know the bulk of what most people are thinking by the 27th, so we can begin planning and getting ready for staff to come back. Rosters and bus routes and all of that, we need to know. So in addition to this plan, another piece that informs this plan is our school calendar. And I want to take just a little bit and talk to you about what we've been thinking about in terms of the school calendar. So students are currently scheduled to start on Monday, August 17th. And you'll recall on June 1st, we came to the board and we asked you to approve a change in the calendar that had been approved previously in April-ish, March-ish, no, that's February. Yeah, February. And the change that we made on June 1st was we wanted to have the goal, based on TEA recommendation, of having as much makeup time and days available in that calendar as possible. So we went from starting school on a Wednesday to we backed it up to Monday to capture 2 days. We also ended the school year, we were scheduled to end it on a Thursday, we moved it to end on a Friday. We also added minutes to the school day to increase the number of possible makeup days or minutes that we have banked. And so we currently have about approximately 17 days that we could close the school district and not have to make up. And so we feel really good about that. What we don't feel good about is today, what we know is that teachers will have 5 pre-service days to start the school year. They're going to show up on a Monday, and then the following Monday, they're going to start with kids. And so we're going to be recommending that we add 3 extra planning days for teachers. It does nothing to the contract for teachers. What it does, it will tell kids that instead of showing up on Monday, August 17th, we're recommending that they show up on Thursday, August 20th as that first day. And here's some of the rationale. As I shared with you, the Smart Restart plan, lots of broad guidelines. Well, campuses and departments are going to have to operationalize these guidelines. Well, the thought, as we've reflected, of teachers coming back on campus, doing all of the regular professional development, getting their classrooms ready, and having to work with principals and assistant principals on operationalizing all of the things that have to be, we just feel like that they need more time. We want teachers to have time to be able to physically arrange their classroom in a socially distanced way and say, hey, I need XYZ for my classroom. And we want to be able to have time to respond to those requests and teachers putting eyes on their classroom. It's going to take a little bit more time to write lesson plans this year because there are people that are going to be carrying face-to-face teaching lesson plans and remote teaching lesson plans. We think that teachers need additional time to do that. TEA has indicated that as Dr. Jones mentioned that they're going to be providing a learning management system, LMS. And what's nice about an LMS, it's kind of like a Google Classroom, but it's fully built out. It is designed to offer classes remotely. So, I don't know, a large percentage of colleges use an LMS to offer their online classes. So it's going to facilitate the attendance taking, the grading of work, all of that is going to be so much easier for our staff. But staff have to learn about how to use that LMS, how to load content into that LMS. There are different containers in the LMS that are going to have to be filled with content, and so teachers are going to need more time to do that. It, at the end of the day, will make their lives easier, but up front, there's a lot of work to do. You know, we're not going to be allowing visitors on campus, and so think about the first day of school, and I've been at Shady Grove on lots of first days of school, and every parent wants to walk down the hall. Well, we're not going to allow them to walk down the hall because that is it's just, you know, shoulder to shoulder. So the thought of how can you send a kindergarten student into a school the first time without someone being there, or they don't know where they're going. And so if we expand from 5 to 8 days, that allows us more time for campuses to plan small group orientations or opportunities for meet the teacher, that if we were doing it in the 5 days, again, we're trying to prep to start school and then turn around and try to space out all of these opportunities for parents to come up there in a socially distant, appropriate way. And then, as we mentioned, bus routes are being completely re-engineered. In the past, like I told the principals, in the past, we've sometimes been able to say twatty. Well, that's just the way we've always done it. We're just going to do it like we've always done it. Well, this is not a year in which we're going to be able to fall back on, this is how we always do it in Burnet. We're having to re-engineering bus routes to accommodate having just 2 students per seat. And so we're going to be doing some double routing. That's going to take time. And so the more time we give transportation, food service, and all of our support services with what our real numbers are and what the campuses are saying their real process is going to be, I think the better chance of school kicking off in a great way has a greater likelihood. The thought then too, we're accomplishing what we've been told by our teachers previously, and that, especially at elementary, is that's a long week if you start on a Monday. Well, you know how COVID life is. If a regular school year was a long week starting on a Monday, think about a COVID year. And so we think starting on a Thursday, Friday then on every campus will be about health and safety procedures, building relationships, what are the just day-to-day procedures that would take place, what are the traditions on our campus. So we're going to tell people it's not about teaching anything in terms of math, reading, writing. It's all about teaching climate, safety, health. And so we're going to provide that time and then come back with that under our belt and start on Monday fresh. Rachel, we placed a calendar at your place. It's not rocket science, but do you want to say anything about the changes besides just the first day, really?
No, really, that's the only change there. They also look to see if the 6 weeks would need to shift, and we don't believe that they would. It would give you 5 weeks, 6 weeks in the first semester for the grading period, so it still is pretty evenly spread out. By doing this, we would have the equivalent of 9.5 days still banked without a staff development waiver. But if we were able to substitute some staff development for student time, we could have up to 14 days, it's the equivalent of 14 days worth of minutes still built in. So there's still the opportunity to have a lot of makeup time if we had to have full campus closures without remote attendance being taken.
So this is just embedded in this report. I will tell you that early last week, I had this item drafted on the agenda. I even shared it with Andy, and I took it off, and I'm kicking myself a little bit because we talked about it, and we became more, after we published the board agenda, we became more convinced we needed to do it, and then I think over the weekend, we came back and we met with principal, actually this morning at 7 o'clock, and everyone was completely in agreement as they thought about it. We want to have the gift of time because we want to kick off the school year the right way, and we don't want it to be so rushed with so much extra added on principal, assistant principal, and teachers' plates that we can't do it. And so this is a report item. What I'd like to ask, if the board is in agreement, I would love to be able to communicate the change tonight, tomorrow, and the board affirm on Monday, the 27th. We've got another meeting. If you don't feel comfortable with that, that's fine. We can hold off on announcing that, allow you to take formal action and announce that on the 27th. Staff is not a concern as much. They're already on contract. They're going to be here. It's just a matter of they're going to have kids or not. My concern is just telling parents as soon as possible that there are 3 days that you maybe weren't planning on getting covered, that we're going to ask you to get covered so we can kick off school the right way.
Looks like to me y'all did the calendar just for a case like this. This is part of the calendar. What you just done is what the reason we adopted the calendar in the first place.
Yep.
Was if we saw things that needed to be changed, this allowed for change without really affecting anything. I think that was exactly what it was set up to be.
So it gives people more time.
Yep.
Contracts aren't impacted at all. And we still have a significant number of makeup opportunities, knowing that we hope we really don't have to use a lot of those because we can lean on the remote learning to take that place.
I would think it's gonna help morale too. I'm not having to run a sprint right off the top.
Yeah.
I've got those extra 3 days that go home for a weekend, and I know elementary forever
Oh, yeah,
would prefer to start with only 2 days in
Oh,
a
yeah.
week.
Yep.
totally.
Forever. And then at high school, going to the block, at least we get to see all our kids before we
Yes.
get a weekend.
On Thursday and Friday, and then start, yep.
See an A day and a B day,
Yeah.
now we go home. It makes perfect sense to me.
It's also gonna give, visiting with Josh today, we're gonna have drivers with very new routes, and so those, transportation or food service workers will be able to report on Monday the 17th, because that's how their employee calendar is built. So we can have drivers out practicing brand new routes for 3 days, so there's a huge safety improvement there as well.
When we proposed the change in June, we didn't know how remote learning would even be funded. We were operating on, it might not be funded at all, or it might be funded very limited number of days, so we better cram in all the minutes that we can so that we don't have to go in the summer. And we just, it's the example of when you learn more, you change, and we learn more. And so we think that this would, knowing what all will be involved with remote learning now, it's gonna give a lot more time to do it well.
And I shared with our team that I've never done this in my career. I've never seen it done. The calendar changed twice within a month of starting school. But I also said, I never want us to be so rigid. And this is the year where I'm probably going to be coming to you and saying, I never thought we'd be asking you to do this, but we need to do X, Y, or Z. And so I don't want us to ever be so rigid as an organization to not respond to the information that we have in front of us, just because we said earlier we were going to do something. Because this is going to be the year in which probably there are going to be lots of opportunities to do things differently.
I can't imagine there being any parents who are gonna complain about 3 more days, especially with what all we're doing. And it's to get prepared to be even safer when we do start.
Yes.
And more logical about it. Part of what we did with our preschool, when we shut down, then to come back up, we were completely ready to reopen the doors. We had our routines, we were ready to hit it. And so I think that we looked good, going in. And that's gonna give them a chance to look good going in.
So would it be okay for me to communicate that tonight and tomorrow?
Yeah.
We'll bring that back as a formal approval item on Monday, the 27th at our next board meeting. That concludes that agenda item, unless you want to talk, anything else we want to talk about. Next item is the purchase of technology devices, and we've got Adam Hermans, Director of Technology, on the telephone. Are you still there, Adam?
I am. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can. Talk to us about Operation Connectivity and the purchases that we're going to be recommending to the board.
All right, great. Well, last Tuesday at 11:30 at night, because that's the timelines that we're on these days, TEA announced funding through Operation Connectivity. It's intended to help purchase devices to enable students to remain connected in the event of necessary distance learning situations. There's two components to this project. One is a bulk purchase of items, so districts pooling together to get a better price in bulk, and also reimbursement of purchases made. So we're going to talk about two separate purchases that we would like to make here to take advantage of these fundings. For the bulk purchase, we would be looking at purchasing mobile hotspots. And these hotspots would serve the same purpose as the internet to student homes that we've been talking about. This will give us a much more cost-effective way to get it done. So TEA released a survey to districts that was due on Sunday, where we could go in and basically reserve a number of devices. And so we had to move quickly to decide how many devices we would need to do this. Based on our internet access survey, in which we have approximately 500 responses so far, about 10% indicated that they didn't have suitable internet access at home. And knowing that many households would have multiple children, we decided that a number of 300 would be reasonable. And I'm going to pause here because I realize while I'm talking, I can't hear if anybody's talking back to me. So if any questions so far?
No, I will point out to the board that you do have a handout, in case you haven't found that at your place, that outlines some of this. But I'll interrupt, Adam, if we need you.
All right, very good. And due to the size and terrain of our district, wireless access is very difficult, as I'm sure many of you know who may spend some time out in the anywhere away from the highway. For that reason, of the devices offered, there were three choices. It was AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon. I know that AT&T and Verizon have good coverage in this area. T-Mobile, while being a great service, I utilize them personally. If you go too far away from the beaten path, it just does not work. And so that wouldn't have been helpful for us in that case. And so we've decided to go half and half with the two companies, so that if one hotspot doesn't work for a particular family, the other one would be likely to. In order to participate in the reimbursement portion of this, we would have to sign up for a 12-month contract, but TEA will cover half of the cost for the devices as well as half of the cost monthly, as long as we prepay up front. All of the service plans that we're talking about here include unlimited internet access with no usage limits or throttling, and that's a great thing. As we looked at these options before, they did not include that, and they were substantially more expensive than even the full price that we're looking at, let alone the half cost that we would have to pay if we participated in this. We would pay the money to TEA, and I know this was a question that came up, and I finally did get an answer back on that. We would be invoiced directly from TEA just for the discounted portion of this, so we would actually be paying out 50% of the total cost. The AT&T hotspots, they don't charge for the hotspot itself, and their monthly fee is $15 per device per month. All in, the discounted rate for 150 devices plus 1 year of service for those devices would be $13,500. Verizon's pricing model is a little different, but we end up in the same place. Their hotspots are $60 per device, but their monthly fee is only $10. So after discounts for the 150 devices, that would be another $13,500, bringing the total cost to the district $27,000. The hotspots could be, the device cost could be paid for through the maintenance tax note. So that would be any of the Verizon hotspots that actually would cost us money up front. Could be paid for with the maintenance tax note that we passed to provide technology devices to students. And we've identified funds in the current year technology department budget that could be used to pay for the internet service portion of the cost. And to remind you, this would take the place of the recent options that we've looked at for providing student internet access at home. So I'll stop there if anybody has any questions about bulk purchase of hotspots.
Proceed.
Okay, very good. The second part of the program would be reimbursement for purchases made. Through this program, we would actually be able to purchase what would have been next year's one-to-one initiative purchase using the same funds that we would have purchased that from, but buying them earlier and getting reimbursed for 50% of the cost. So that's a win-win for us, and it provides them to us at a time when, we're likely to need them for distance learning. To qualify, the purchases must be made between May 21st and July 22nd, 2020. And listening to the TEA webinar on the subject, the end date is likely to be pushed further than July 22nd, but we don't know that. And so we would like to move as quickly as possible just in case it's not.
So literally, last Tuesday, on the 3 o'clock call that Dr. Jones and I were on, they're telling us about this possible program. Tuesday late, they send out the survey. Wednesday, Adam and I are on the phone. We're having to figure this out because by Sunday at midnight, they're closing the survey and you lose opportunities to participate. And we've got to make this purchase by Wednesday?
Tomorrow,
Wednesday.
Wednesday, yep.
So, this is how we're having to operate today. If you don't move quickly and in an agile way, you're going to miss out on opportunity. And we've already missed out just because when we bought the 2000 computers, we just missed out on the window that they would have reimbursed us for some of that. So we didn't want to miss this window.
And to further Keith's point, the next bullet item, full rules and details of the reimbursement program are set to be released this week. So we don't even have those yet. But what we do have, I sat through webinars on 2 consecutive days. Day 2 was the same as day 1, but with different questions, and that was helpful. So the information that I'm presenting you came directly from TEA through a webinar. Okay, so TEA has also stated that they're working to determine if the Google Apps for Education licenses, which we would need one for each Chromebook that we purchase, would be reimbursed as well. And that will be a part of the full rules and details that are upcoming. But as a reminder, these are purchases that we would have made next year, and the price would likely be the same if we were to wait and buy them next year. But the district's, the cost for one of those licenses is $24.49. So the numbers that we give you could swing by $19,110, depending on whether or not 50% of those licenses are funded. So to put us in a position to provide each student with a device would require 1,560 additional Chromebooks and 52 carts, both of which the TEA has stated would be eligible for reimbursement. This is the same number of devices and carts that we had planned to purchase for next year as phase 2 of the one-to-one initiative. So truly, this is a purchase that was upcoming. We've received a quote from Trinity 3 for these devices, licenses, and carts. We've worked with them in the past. In fact, we purchased the first round through them. We've been happy with the devices. They haven't made it into student hands yet, but some devices that were purchased for the middle school last year have and have worked well. They do very well with their warranty. Due to the surge in demand for Chromebooks, the pricing has gone up about $25 per unit since the time that we last purchased from them. So each Chromebook would carry a cost of $285.51. Prices for the licenses and the carts are the same as what we paid previously. Also, due to demand, we're looking at a delivery date in November. This is in line with other vendors that I've called and asked when we could get them. I mean, every school district, I would say in the country, but in much of the world, I'm sure, are looking for Chromebooks right now. TEA's timelines are in line with that as well. The total cost for the devices, licenses, and carts is $519,948. After reimbursement, the district's portion would be $259,974 if the licenses are covered, and $279,084 if they are not. This purchase could also be made with funds from the maintenance tax note, and that's where they would have been purchased from next year also. So do we have any questions about the Chromebook purchase?
Well, then Clay, why don't you fill in what you learned from bond counsel if we make the purchase with maintenance tax funds?
Yes, if we make the purchase with those funds, that purchase of the obligations of that tax note. So then when the TEA does refund us the 50%, that can go into the general fund balance and can be spent. We have complete flexibility to how those funds will be spent. Is it to support future initiatives? It's totally up to the board how those funds are spent. So that is a serious win-win, to free up some dollars in these times.
And then I explained the timeline, but I don't think in the entire time I've been here, have I called Andy up on a Thursday and said, hey, I'd like to add an board agenda item to spend $500,000, okay? And so, we typically don't operate that way, but again, we got to get it approved to get it ordered to get reimbursed. And Adam, clarify for me, I just want to make sure, so they're approving, by approving tonight, they're approving $519,948 for the devices, licenses, and cards, and then $27,000 for hotspots.
That is correct, yep.
And then we'll get the reimbursement and win that way, but you're approving the full amount tonight.
And the item is an action item if you want it to be.
Does the dollar amount need to be specified in the motion?
As presented.
As presented.
And this is the hotspot under the purchase of technology devices, does the hotspot fall under that umbrella as well?
Yes.
I move for the approval of the purchase of technology devices as presented.
Second.
All right, thank you. Motion been made and seconded to approve the purchases of technological devices as presented. Any more comments or questions? No, fine. All the fines of nature every now and then. Thank goodness for a little help with that. If no questions, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item regards the approval of a resolution of the board regarding suspension of the state accountability system for the 2021 school year. And the board book that you were provided was a resolution requesting that the Commissioner of Education and the Governor of Texas suspend the 2021 state accountability system. Put it simply, this is because we don't believe there's any way to accomplish an accountability system this year that's fair or equitable. And because principals, teachers, staff, they need to have their sole focus on providing high quality instruction while also supporting the social emotional needs of our students during the pandemic. By approving the resolution, you would be adding your voice, our voice, to the growing chorus of district teachers, parents, and professional organizations calling for the suspension of STAR and the accountability system for this school year. It simply just does not make sense.
Keywords are.
I so moved for the resolution.
Make a motion to, approve the district resolution of the board regarding state accountability.
Second.
All right, thank you. Motion been made and seconded to approve the resolution of the board regarding suspension of state accountability systems for 2021. Any comments or questions? No? What's that?
Nothing.
I can't hear what my man.
I had to pause.
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. That's a whole lot more fun to do that in person than it is on that video.
Absolutely.
I just wait for you to say roll call.
And then Sharon will be passing around the resolution to get everyone's signature. The final item is just a report and discussion on the November 3rd, 2020 bond election. As a reminder, the original bond election date was scheduled for May 2nd, 2020. But because of the pandemic, the district was required by governor's order to approve, so you were required to approve moving the bond election to the November 3rd, 2020 election date during your March 30th board meeting. As a reminder, the bond election made up of two propositions. Proposition A, $23.9 million, focused on facility projects and the purchase of buses, including priorities around safety, security, infrastructure, learning environment, and student growth. And the Proposition B was our athletic projects for $5.76 million, a construction of a weight room that included a baseball locker room and a girls' soccer locker room, and turfing the Burnet Middle School athletic field. And as a reminder, with the passage of the 2020 bond election, the Board of Trustees would be projecting, along with the administration, to lower the tax rate in August by a minimum of 0.5 cents, and BCIC would continue to have the second to lowest tax rate in among area school districts based on those projections. With that said, with so much uncertainty related to COVID-19, we've been having discussions as an administrative team about canceling the November election with the goal of evaluating the feasibility of a bond election in May or November 21. A couple of our concerns are, one, our ability to provide information to our voters and our staff. One, because of COVID-19 and the lack of ability to effectively get together and share information. And then just two, because of the national election and the ability for our message to get through and being such a down ballot issue. We might not get the attention we need. We also don't know today what our enrollment's going to look like in the fall. And because we have to make any adjustments to the bond election, cancel or adjust it by August 17th, we're going to be starting school after any action is possible. We could find ourselves in October with a lower enrollment rate than what we were projecting. And the reality is we will have some percentage of students that are learning remotely. And so that might cause some people to say, well, you don't truly need the facilities that you're asking us to request. I think also given the current economic climate, even though the approved bond, and we've said it over and over, would not result in a tax rate increase, never has, would admit that, there are still a lot of voters who believe anytime you talk about a bond proposition, that's impacting the tax rate and their bottom line. And so during a very tough economic climate, we don't want to have to battle that messaging. And then finally, as you know, a bond election takes a lot of energy. And I'm just concerned about our staff's ability to carry that load along with the management of all of the COVID-19 related issues. So the administration would like to recommend that on July 27th, next Monday, at our next regular board meeting, the board approve a resolution canceling the November 3rd bond election, give us a chance to see what our enrollment actually does, what remote instruction looks like, and come back and develop a plan that makes sense for the future. There's no doubt we're going to need the improvements and the renovations and the expansion of facilities in the future. It may not be right now. As a reminder on the calendar, if it passed in November, we were looking at getting the Bertram edition completed by August 2022. So if we went back in May, we'd be looking at being able to, instead of opening that renovated or that new edition in the start of the 22 school year, it would be that maybe January, February of 23. So maybe second semester if we were able to go in May. So we believe that we can still accomplish everything we need to. I think it's going to be a little bit tighter at Bertram based on projections right now in the out years, but we think this is the best direction to go right now. As a reminder, the Board of Trustees election, we don't have a choice on that. So it was also moved by governor's order, and we've got place 3 and place 7. Place 3 is Suzanne Brown, incumbent. She is running unopposed. And then place 7, Mark Kincaid, our incumbent, and then Tricia Carr, is also running in that place. And so that election will take place. And again, we just need to do a really good job of reminding people that we never have a board election in November. We're May, and we're going to have to do a good job in telling people and reminding people to go out and vote, because that's just as important as a bond proposition. So,
No refiling with that for the candidates.
no, yeah, everything naturally just moves forward. So, refiling.
Refiling.
No, but we will, in visiting with bond council this afternoon, there will be a simple order. If we do choose to cancel the bond, then we will need an order saying, but yes, the board election will.
Okay. Any questions about the bond election, or is there anything that you would like us to do differently?
Oh, just for the heck of it. Should our enrollment increase?
Mhm.
Is there some, I know we have backup plans for virtual assessment, but will there be,
Well, I mean, the first
you know,
phase,
change attendance zones or whatever,
so the first backup would be that there are instructional areas at Bertram that are non-instructional areas, or areas that are being used as a lounge or something else that could be turned into an instructional area. You could look at, could we move the line in a way that moves kids to Shady Grove and RJ Ritchie? Transportation becomes a little bit of a challenge. We could bring a portable onto campus. We could look at any transfers and begin denying transfers based on space availability. So it's just going to be interesting to watch. Our demographer, as a reminder, kind of in the heart of the COVID issue, he saw some housing activity still taking place, and D.R. Horton still moving forward.
It hasn't slowed down in our neighborhood. I mean,
Yeah, and so, I think it's still coming.
The builder, he said some of their sales this last couple months have been the best they've ever been.
Same thing, it's kind of Austin, you're in,
And this is close to Austin, so.
Yeah.
But still, I think that moves this way.
We're moving this way.
And I don't want to add salt to the wound, but I did talk to Clay Cove, and they were indicating that if we would have passed it in May, that the construction budgets are all coming in beautiful right now. So if we will plan on having an agenda item on the 27th then to formally cancel that election. And that is it. That's all I see, administration, so.
I want to thank our guests for being here today. Appreciate their being here. It's not always just going, generally.